I want to do an introduction. Sandra is my one of my mentors, one of my best friends. She's an amazing woman. She's totally shifted how I view the world and myself. She trained me in hypnosis. She trained me in Reiki. She's an amazing hypnotist and a Reiki master teacher. She had her baby that she wasn't even supposed to be able to have without medications through hypnosis, had 3 brain surgeries this year, has beaten cancer twice, is an amazing, amazing coach. And I've seen her help so many people transform. So I'm super glad to have you on today, Sandra. I know there's all kinds of stuff I probably missed about your background, but is there anything else that I should share with the audience?
No, I usually introduce myself as an integrative life and business coach, but you make it sound way sexier the way you say it.
So my experience, I've been in so much personal development stuff, and when I met you, you just tied all these things together for me. And it was, you know, the psychology, the spirituality, the health. And so truly you really do have an integrated practice, and it's transformed the way that I teach personal development as well.
Thank you. Well, you in your recent speaking endeavors and your coaching, I have heard over and over, and I've witnessed how you are integrating them in your own unique way. And that's really, you know, so honoring for me, because it's opened me to look at things in even greater depth. And so I appreciate, you know, when the student passes the master teacher, right? And so I think we find that in many of our conversations, that you're often leading me in this wonderful path now, and I'm grateful for that.
Well, I see you do one-on-one sessions, and I'm not so sure about that yet, but I'm very, very honored by that compliment. So today we're going to get into Reiki. Okay. Reiki, you know, energy healing is, for a lot of people, it's still a little bit woo-woo. It doesn't, you know, how do we combine that into our Western philosophy so it makes sense? And for me, it's understanding that at our atomic level, we're all just energy. The universe is made of energy. And so from that, talk to me about what Reiki is and how that applies to us.
So my training actually came under what we call like a traditional Reiki lineage. And so my master and master's master came right from Japan. And so when I first moved into energy work, that's how, the first form of energy work I was trained in was Reiki. And so it literally translates to universal life force energy, or so people tell me, because I do not speak Japanese. And it's not required to understand the energy and the background behind it. But over the years, I've certainly studied many more forms and teach many other forms of energy work. But Reiki's always been kind of near and dear to my heart, because I think that the basic principles, there are 5 basic principles, and I stick to a pretty traditional method when I teach it, because I feel like that's enough. The 5 basic principles that are covered, when you live them as daily practice, and then you have a deep understanding of chakra systems or energy centers in the body and how they relate to physical structural parts of the body. Because as you mentioned in the introduction, you know, my background was actually, I was a research teacher, is one of the things that I did. And my background in like marriage and family counseling and that sort of stuff, I'm really interested in how the brain works and how that works together with body systems. And so I train massage therapists and reflexologists on, you know, muscles and tendons and attachments and bones and things. And so Western medicine is fascinating to me as well. It's just that when we can open ourselves up to that and a traditional philosophy, we find that we heal more rapidly.
Yes. And
we grow.
Yeah. And so the way that I always teach it is, our endocrine system controls the hormones that get dropped in our body based on what we think about, what we focus on, the language we use, our body language, all these different things. And so, you know, the best example is when you get stressed out, you drop cortisol, you know, and into your stomach, and your stomach gets tight and you go into fight or flight mode. Well, that cortisol is really just an energetic signal. It affects how we digest food. And then the you know, residue from that cortisol stays in our stomach. It affects our digestion, and it affects everything that stems from that energy center. And so that's the simple way that I bring it back to the Western philosophy, is how do we then use Reiki to flush that out? But first, let's get into the 5 principles, because if you can stay congruent and consistent in those 5 principles, those emotional patterns don't really develop very deeply, do they?
Right. So So as we first begin the process, it's about coming back to the daily practice, right? And coming back to applying them as life presents itself, because we don't stop living just because we start our Reiki journey. And so, in fact, some people just kind of start living when they start their Reiki journey. So what we do is, as we're part of that and we're moving through it, I think that the universe brings us exactly what we need. So when we talk about universal life force energy, that life force energy, whatever you call that, is insignificant to the process. So whether that's God, Allah, Buddha, Jesus, the oneness, science, nature, from whichever background you come, you can connect those. And when you attach to those areas, you can start to explore the principles. So the principles are simple. Just for today, do not worry. And so when you commit to your journey, you will have opportunities that cross your path to do that. But we know that's a lower, slower vibration. I love what you teach and we teach about the love and fear spectrum, right?
Yeah, so that's kind of what these 5 principles are, right? Is how do we spend more time in love and less time in fear and worry?
So do not, just for today, do not worry. Obviously, that's a lower, slower vibration. It has to do with locking into a fear base. We love to tell the story that because we love people, we worry about them. But it's just part of the lie that we misunderstood for a long time, because worry does not come from love. It comes from a fear space. And if someone is facing challenges or opportunities to grow, if we can see them in that love place, then we can see them moving through that challenge. And when we see them stuck or we see them challenged, that's not love.
Right. So I love the principle of just for today. I read Dale Carnegie's book, I think, How to Stop Worrying and Start Living. And he says to live in day-tight compartments. And so it doesn't seem so dramatic to just stop worrying just for today. Right. And so all of these principles start with just for today, and it takes it down into bite-sized chunks. And just for today, I can give up worrying. Right.
Right. And I tell people, when people are working like, for example, a 12-step program or something like that, they also work on a principle oftentimes of just for today. And people have told me when they're working through releasing addictions or different things, sometimes it's just this hour. If I can just stay clean to this hour, or sometimes it's just this minute. And so sometimes the principles work the same way. Like just in this very moment, as long as I'm present, I do not worry, and I can remain in that space without that.
Yeah, that thing we're worried about, it's not here today, right? It always seems to be in the future. And so we bring that pain into the present, even though it's not really here.
So we're either ruminating on the past or we're focused on the future. And when we remain in the present, in the just for today, or in a more literal sense, just in this moment, then there is no worry. And the same way, just for today, there is, do not anger, right? The second principle, there's no anger in the moment. If I'm present right here and now, I don't have to be in that fear space. If I stay in the love place, then there is no anger. Anger comes from fear and lack. Yes. It comes from worry and concern, right? Of what could happen. But if we trust, if our faith is greater than our fear, then there is no place for anger or worry or.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. So those are the first 2. What's the next one?
So just for today, do your work honestly. And I find that when I work with Reiki students, I very rarely attract dishonest people. So that's not the concern. But oftentimes it's, what is your work? What are you here to do? There's so many of us that don't really think about or focus on what's our purpose here. So as long as we're floating around Earth School in this meat bag, as long as we're here, with this being having a human experience, what are we here to do? And when we can align, or as you and I talk about, becoming congruent in that purpose, then life is really simple. It's when we get out of alignment, when we spend a lot of time doing stuff that's not really what we're here to do, Yeah,
of course. And this is, right now I could be doing real estate stuff. I could be doing all kinds of stuff, but I know that this is my work, right? And so here I am, and everything else can fall by the wayside because this is what lights me up. This is what brings me out of fear and into love even more, and where I can flow. So I love that principle.
Me too. And you do such an amazing job with that. So do your work honestly. So I pose to my students to think about what is your work while you're here in Earth School. And it could be your vocation. It could be what you do. Like, I say I'm really blessed because what I do is what feeds the baby, right? So it pays the rent and it feeds my baby boy. And I feel good about that. But it's okay if your vocation isn't your purpose, as long as you're taking the time to work in that purpose, whatever that is along the way. Because sometimes we choose to generate our income through a vocation that doesn't feel in alignment with our purpose. And that's not makes a bad person, or we're not doing bad things. We're still probably serving our community in wonderful ways, but also working towards that purpose, working honestly towards that purpose that we're here for as we see it.
Yes. And then number 4 is just for today, be humble and appreciative, right?
Right.
And, you know,
so
gratitude is such a big thing for me, and appreciation. And I really, you know, I talk about my antenna theory, that we tune into vibrations of thought waves. And I think when you come from an ego space, when you're not humble, you try to have all the answers here, and you're not open to the ideas coming to you, right? You're not going to tune into the channel that's going to bring you that. And so being appreciative and humble taps you into those thought patterns that opens the way to the universe, right?
Well, and I love to talk to students too about the idea that when we talk about being humble, oftentimes we want to think about that like if someone would compliment something that we would do to help them, and they would say, "Oh, Sandra, I just feel so much better. Thanks for the coaching session." And it would be easy to be humble to say, "Oh, well, you did all the work, right? Like you made the choice, you did it." That's easy to be humble. But what about when that same client or, you know, coaching client might come back to you and say, "Well, actually, Sandra, you're not doing a very good job because I'm not feeling very happy today." And to also allow our humility, our ability to be humble, and let that be theirs as well. Understand that we can be humble in our role, and that just as that we are not responsible for others' happiness, and we can't control that, we can certainly set them up for it, we can support them. We also must be humble in our response to their displeasure in our interactions.
Yes, absolutely. All right, and there's one more principle. What's the last one?
Final principle, yeah, feel kindness and compassion for all. And again, I tend to attract really kind students, but it's that compassion element. And so when people talk to you about compassion, what do they usually think that means, Nicholas?
Maybe the golden rule, treating others like they treat themselves.
So they think it's a lot about being empathy, or in treating people as they want to be treated. Oftentimes, though, I find that it goes beyond that. A deeper level of true compassion that we talk a lot about in the course is the idea of having empathy without becoming part of the drama. And as coaches, we know that's really important, because in the moment we can stay very present with our client, we can be really good. But then at the end of the day, when we've hung up from all the video chats and we put it away, can we trust in the universe to guide them in their place, and not to become tied up in whatever it is they've been challenged with or given opportunity to grow through at this time? And that compassion is like not becoming part of their drama. Instead, have the empathy and help them through, provide this stuff.
And I love the analogy you use. You say, you know, if someone's in a boat and their boat's sinking, it's not going to help them for you to get in the boat with them, right? You have to stay dry and stable on your boat. And and for me, it also, like, I love the word unconditional. And so you can watch somebody do something to you or treat you in a certain way, and not change who you are, not change that place of love that you come from. And I think, you know, that lesson keeps hitting me all the time, and I'm watching myself grow into this place where you could say whatever you want to me, and I'm just going to stay in this amazing place.
In the love place.
Yeah, I'm here, and I'm committed to it, and it's been life-changing.
Yeah, why would you want to leave?
Yeah, there's no reason to, no matter what happens. And you know, Tony Robbins talks about staying in a beautiful state, and I think for me it's just the term unconditional joy, unconditional love.
Yeah.
So
one of the areas of this, the Reiki study that a lot of people are unfamiliar with, but if I could tell them briefly, is that there are, if you choose to go through traditional Reiki and study traditional Reiki, there are like 4 levels. And the first level is really about self-love and self-care. The second level is about continuing to manage your own energy as you begin to work with the energy of others. And then there's Reiki Master, which is where you begin working with distance work and you remove the limitations, you know, physical, structural, mental, emotional, or spiritual, any limitations you may have thought Reiki held. But then the place in which Nicholas is now is the Reiki Master Teacher. And that's that level where you start to think about, how will you share this message with the world? Yeah. And one of the things that I wanted to share about you is how impressed I am that as we're moving through this journey together, that you have chosen, when I asked you, okay, how would you like to teach your message? Tell them what you told me.
So I just had this idea, and I've wanted to do this for a while, is to go practice it, to go live it in the world, and to do a mission trip with Reiki healing. And, you know, we've lined up some pretty cool stuff in Brazil in February to take a group of students who are going to go through Reiki 1 and Reiki 2, and then we're going to go practice it in the jungle villages, and we're going to go heal people. And so that's something I'm super excited about.
I love that every student I've worked with, as they come up on the curriculum part of it, like how will I teach it? It's been so them in their path, but your path's so great for you because you love travel and you love service and you love bringing people together and groups together. And I just think it's so beautiful what you've chosen for yourself. And I'm really honored to be a part of that.
Yeah, we're going to have a blast. But let's talk a little bit about how we use Reiki for healing. So we talked about the, you know, the emotional part of it. And that's spiritual as well. But, you know, when someone says they come to you and they have pain or they have a health issue, how do we use Reiki to help them?
So, you know, obviously we are not going to sum it up in a 30-minute webinar because there's hours and hours of master and student. But the short version of it is that Reiki works in all ways. So there's an old cliche that says, you know, Reiki knows where Reiki goes. And so sometimes we don't even have to identify the source or, you know, or the symptom, but the energy will flow naturally in healing. So people that have studied other forms of healing, like people who have done laying of the hands or other forms of healing along the way, prayer healing, group healing, things like that, they're familiar with the idea that when you open yourself up to the space of healing, that the practitioner can then guide and move the energy as they assist you. So in Reiki 1, which is really how I like to work with people, I like to empower them, teach a man to fish, right? I like to teach them how to move their own energies and manage their own energies. And primarily in the beginning phases, we work with the chakra systems or the energy centers in the body. And in traditional Reiki, we focus on the 7 major chakra systems in the body. So, you know, yoga is so popular this day. Most people have experienced Savasana at the end of their yoga practice, and maybe the yoga master teacher has talked them through the chakras before, and they're familiar, and they don't even know they're familiar. Right. But we work a lot with those systems with my students in training, and we find that that's one of the most basic and simple forms to do dramatic healing work, physically, structurally, as well as mentally, emotionally, or spiritually.
So that might that makes sense to me, but let's use an example. So let's say there's a root. Let's talk about the root chakra. So it's at the base of the spine, and there's mental and emotional patterns that create hormone responses that store in the area of the root chakra at the base of the spine. And so if you live in fear about certain things, so each chakra stands for something, right? And the root is your money, career, taking care of yourself. And so if you have worries about that, you then drop hormones into that energy. And then there's a physical structural component that goes with that. So what's the physical structural component of the root chakra?
The bones. So the root chakra is the foundational system. So just like for caveman, it would be like food, water, shelter. In today's society, it's mostly people's use of their career or their finances to provide those things for themselves. Obviously, we know that's not true in certain areas of the world. But most of the folks that you and I coach, it's about career and finances for those people. And it has to do with the bones, the real physical structure of the body. And it was an interesting story because early in my practice, when I was becoming master teacher, we had someone refer to us, a chiropractor referred to us, client of theirs that had been through the hospital, and they had done lots of x-rays and looked at these bones, and they could not figure out why these bones weren't healing. And they had tried.
Uh-oh, lost you. Well, I'm going to tell a story while you are frozen. I don't know if that's you or me. So when I quit my job and I was coaching wrestling and just trying to make it in real estate, my muscles and my joints started breaking down really bad. And I was super healthy at the time. And like I was eating healthy and I couldn't figure out why. And the emotional around that, lost her. The emotional patterns around that created this breakdown in my body, and it had nothing to do with my diet or, sorry, I'm finishing my story. it had nothing to do with my diet or the way I took care of myself, but my body was breaking down because of my emotional state, and that was tied to my root chakra. So if you want to go ahead and finish your story, since you cut out.
Sorry about that. So yeah, so what happened is I really honestly, when they sent the client to me and my master teacher, I literally thought to myself, I have no idea how to do that. Like, I don't know that Reiki can heal a bone. Like, sure, I had used it to release cancer. That made sense to me, right? That's soft tissue. And I know that our cells change that often, right? But I was thinking, how do we do the bone? But I just opened myself up to the idea that it would work with the root chakra. And I went through the practice that I've been trained in. And as I did that, we had the hospital continue to show us the results, and this gentleman's bone completely healed, completely, after they had tried everything they knew in this specialized location. And it was a huge eye-opener for me, because when I could see the things that could be done, it was like the last limitation I held physically, structurally, that I thought it was absolutely fascinating to me. I was so honored that the universe brought me that opportunity.
Yeah, that's a cool story. So, and I know you have like a huge list of stories like that. And one thing that I always say is modern Western medicine doesn't understand the two things that affect our health. And that's number one is emotions, and number two is our diet. And of course, there's other things, but our emotional patterns, right, create that situation. And when they go in and they read it, they can't read the energy of that situation, so they don't understand why we're not healing. But it's always that mental emotional pattern that is keeping us there. And if we come from that love space, you can heal anything, right? Your bones can regenerate. And
Yeah.
It's cool.
And in fairness to those in Western medicine that get a poor rap, because I have some very good friends that are surgeons and doctors, and what I know is that there's more and more research supporting it. They simply have been looking for the research for a long time. But now that they've had more studies and they've been doing more of that, I feel that you'll see more and more of that. In fact, most every hospital will allow a Reiki master to come in during a procedure or pre and post surgery, and they're very open to that now. And so many of the folks that I've trained have been invited in. I've been invited into hospice centers, hospital rooms, and so on, and they've been very open to that. So understanding that sometimes it's part of the mystery, but the research shows them that people are increasing their health at a more rapid rate when they incorporate the Reiki. So you'll be surprised how many clinical institutes are opening up to that.
And I think you and I are going to have a mission to speed that process up even more.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So we talked about the root chakra, and then it goes up, the sacral, solar plexus, heart, throat, and then your third eye and your crown. And those are the major chakras, and each of them have a physical structural component, an emotional component, and a spiritual component tied to them, right?
Yep, every one of them. And so, in more what we call modern energy work, people will associate stones or oils or things with those chakras, and they'll get additional bonus results from that. Traditional Reiki doesn't hold to that. Although obviously you and I have had training in that. I've had extensive training in using those other forms of energy work together. So, but in traditional Reiki itself, they work primarily with the chakras and the 5 principles, and working a lot one-on-one with master and teacher to see how you can apply it to your own life, and then begin to help to work with the energies of others, whether it be present or distance healing as you move through Reiki 3 and master.
Yeah, and I remember when I first started this, someone would tell me that they were having an issue, and either it was their health or it was in their life, and they would say, oh, my shoulder hurts, and I would say, oh, I know what's going on with you. Are you having this emotional pattern? They would go, how the hell did you know that? Right? Or they would have, I'm really worried about my job and my relationship. I go, oh, I bet that's showing up in your body in this area, isn't it? And they go, how the hell did you know that? So it's such a cool tool. It's been so fun to learn.
I do have to say that mind-body connection was my favorite part in the Reiki journey, because Reiki came to me when I was releasing cancer for the first time. And so it was fascinating to me, the story that my body would tell about old patterns or thought patterns that had been stored. And as I would release them, how the body would heal so quickly. And again, because I was being tested every month, I could see those results as they were coming through. So I became very intrigued by the mind-body connection work. And I love to teach that sort of work and allow people to be their own healers, and understanding that when they change the thought, then they change the feeling, and it all works together.
Yeah. Yeah. What a journey. And then, so we're not going to get too far into it, but hypnosis, when you pair that with Reiki, you know, I always teach that you can move energy in your hand and make your hand feel warm just by thinking about it. And just like that, you can move energy through any part of your body just by thinking about it. And under hypnosis, it's even more powerful. And so we use hypnosis to flush it out, and then we reprogram the emotional pattern that sets that in there, right?
Absolutely. So that's always been such a blessing for me to have the privilege of working in an integrative practice, because I know that when we're making changes and we're releasing things that no longer serve us, or bringing in energies that do, that if we're combining the mental, emotional with the physical, structural, and the spiritual, that it just so quickly, exponentially increases. And every client can attest to that, and how quickly that happens for them. And everybody knows that if they think of one of their most challenging times of their life and they've survived it, because here they are, and if they're healthy and well, they can quickly say, well, this is what I was doing. I got good about what I was putting in, on, and around my body. This is what I was doing. I was giving myself these thoughts, feeding myself these thoughts with regularity. And the beauty of hypnosis is it goes beyond willpower, and it gives you an opportunity to get really congruent with the conscious and subconscious, which I know you talk a lot to people about. And when those come together, along with that, you know, divine connection, that spiritual truth, whatever that is, science, nature, you know, as we said before, God, Allah, Buddha, whatever it is for them, when you bring those all together, then you're then congruent. So if there's a misalignment in your value system or your belief system with the practices that you're using, they're not going to stick.
Yes.
You know, it has to align with your truth. And so Reiki affords that opportunity for all belief systems to work comfortably with it. And the hypnosis is such a huge advantage.
Yeah, and I love that it transcends religion, right? You just said it doesn't matter. And I believe a lot of times religion is a creation of the ego, and maybe not always, but you know, I'm different than you because I believe differently than you. And Reiki says no, we're all energy, and we all have this capacity to experience love and to be healthy, and healthy is our natural state, and it's only fear patterns that create an unhealthy environment in our body.
So Nicholas might say that if we just align with love, then it all comes together.
That's what I would say. That's exactly what I would say.
Absolutely.
And I know you would too. So yeah, let's tell people, you know, next steps. I'm sure there's a lot of people interested in what you have to say. And every time I tell these stories, people are like, how do I learn more about this? So, you know, we talked a little bit about our Brazil trip. I think that's probably the most obvious thing.
Absolutely. So, you know, I've had a practice for a long time where I train people individually and I work in groups. But one of the things that I feel really good about my journey, not that I would not continue doing that, but I feel really good about the idea that as we talked about doing your work honestly and being in alignment with your purpose, I love serving as teacher and coach and all those things. But I also know that I find myself with every birthday remembering that I'm moving more into the category of sage, and in that no longer the maiden or the mother, but into that sage space of my life. And I understand that part of what I do is I teach people to assist people in this. And so I've been really impressed with the masters and master teachers that have come to me recently, and I feel very comfortable referring to them, and each of them with a little bit different way of sharing the message and how they do that. And so, like Nicholas, I love the mission trip because you want to serve and you want to give in your way of doing that. And so, for example, you know, when people want to learn, I could very easily be like, oh, you want to go do an intensive, you want to apply it, you want to make it happen, Nicholas is your man. And so what they do is they find a really great master teacher to work with. Now, I've had a tendency up until now to not be very pleased with some of the trainings that happen at the hospitals. As I told you, a lot of hospitals are opening up to Reiki only because they typically bring someone in, and in a one-day training, they're like, okay, there you go. You've mastered level 1, which is self-care and self-healing. Who masters that in a half a day?
Right.
Or they'll move them on and be like, okay, now you're at level 2, time to start working with other people's energies. And they haven't had time to really master their own development. So without judgment, everyone's going to learn in their own way. I have always felt that my master teachers that I've trained have a really good sense of curriculum and what it takes to know when their student has reached that place and is ready for what we call attunement and to move to the next level of healing. And for everybody, it's going to be different. Sometimes they need to more deeply connect with their God, and sometimes they need to spend some time really creating new systems and structures for their body. And whatever it is, you know, finding the right master teacher for you. Not that the hospital programs would be bad, but I think that if you really want a deeper journey and the people that you would tend to attract, Nicholas, I would think they would be better served with a master that's going to, you know, personalize that to them and really assist them in how does it apply to their family or their business or their own personal healing.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. And so we can definitely provide that. And the mission trip is a great way to do that. And I also want to talk about our intensive retreat that we have coming up, because that might be a very solid foundation for someone that's going into Reiki. So Sandra, if you want to tell a little bit about the whole purpose of our 4-day intensive retreat.
Yeah, so, well, what had happened is we had been asked to talk about this concept of aligning. And so when Nicholas said, I really am being called to talk to people about how do they bring the subconscious, the conscious together? How do we work with the ego instead of against it? How do we keep it congruent with their body and their physical structural self? And talking about that, I felt so honored that you invited me to join you in presenting those ideas in the course that we called Align with Love. And as we did that, what we noticed is that all the class was really helpful. We taught it at first as a 3-hour, and then sometimes we've taught it as a 1-hour class. What we realized is that if people are really going to make changes, they're going to stick. They're going to need a pretty intensive process to do that. And that's when the concept of the intensive retreat came up, and the idea of really pulling yourself out of your everyday life and plopping yourself down and using these techniques that we've been spending the last half an hour of your life talking about how do we stay in love, and how do we keep ourselves away from the absence of love or fear. How do we stay congruent with our conscious and subconscious mind? So that particular retreat is an opportunity to work with the mental emotional. So there'll be some hypnosis and self-hypnosis training so people can learn to manage their own mind, retrain their brain. It'll also have a lot of elements of the Reiki curriculum in it. So it's going to allow people to align with their own chakra systems. The beautiful part is that Nicholas came up with some awesome ideas about some prep work, right? To really do a detox and cleanse and come in as your best, healthiest, and highest self. And then once you're there, to take that to move through the intensive work we're going to do with some follow-up mentoring and coaching courses afterwards. So just really an intensive opportunity to prepare yourself for change, come and experience the change in a safe environment with lots of different modalities working together at once, physically, structurally, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually, and then moving from there into to that follow-up coaching in the process to assimilate it back into real life when you get home.
Yeah, so the idea is that, you know, whatever's stopping you right now from moving forward, from having your best life, it's just an emotional fear-based pattern. And so we want to get you down, you know, in a very small group where we can pick apart those patterns and the subconscious programs that run and totally change your life, right? Totally take a jackhammer to all those old patterns, give you new emotional patterns that serve you, that create the life you want, that keep you moving forward and keep you in that emotion of love, and just give you such an extreme emotional event around everything that you want that you just leave a totally different person in a totally different space. And I think that's really only possible in that small group setting. So if you guys are interested in that, I'm going to leave a link below to our landing page, or you can message either Sandra or I to learn more about that journey as well.
And who wouldn't want to align with love? Come on, that sounds amazing. Like everybody, me, pick me. I want to do that. One of the things that we have decided though is the course will be a small course, and so we're capping it. And so when you reach out, you're going to want to be timely. Not that there won't be others coming up in the future, but in order to really get the intimate experience we need, it really needs to be capped. So securing your position quickly, if that's something you want to do, would probably be wise. If you're feeling moved, that you'd like to start the new year with new patterns, release those extreme emotional events that kept you stuck up until now, that might be a really good package. It might be a really smart way to go.
So intensive retreat, and then Reiki Brazil mission trip should give some good options. Otherwise, they can follow both of us. We're going to keep putting out great content. I know I have a couple speeches coming up. I'm going to put on my social media as well, and I'm sure you do too. So
yeah.
And I will see you at your hypnosis certification class in a couple weeks. So, and also,
besthypnosistraining.com. Come on out. Nicholas is going to help us out. He's going to be present for that training. And we'd love to have you. If you think you want to retrain your brain, come to that too.
Yes.
Thanks.
So if anyone's interested in that, definitely reach out.